Welcome to Global Forum for Teacher Educators. We are human rights educators. Global Forum for Teacher Educators. La 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 la. We are human rights educators. Global Forum for Teacher Educators. La 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 la. We are human rights educators. Global Forum for Teacher Educators. La 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 la.
Hello and welcome for being here. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Tammy-Ann. I'm actually speaking to you from Australia. So at the moment it is 10 p.m. on Sunday night, and I'm really excited to be sharing with you a brain-based holistic approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning. Now, of course, I won't have time tonight to go through all of this exciting, fascinating approach to education, but I will go through some of it and pack as much into the 30 minutes as I can for you. I would like to start by saying a really big thank you to Dr. Minia Musa and the Global Forum for Teacher Educators. It's an amazing initiative and I'm really glad to be a part of it. So, the brain-based holistic approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning. Let's get started. Before we do, I want you to know this. I should not be here tonight. I should not be here. Why? Well, according to the statistics here in Australia, I should be disadvantaged for life. Why? Because growing up, certain childhood circumstances meant that I wasn't supposed to have finished school and got any out of school qualifications and have a good job, etc., be healthy and so forth. But those statistics could not be further from the truth. As you'll see in a minute, I've gone on to do wonderful things and have a brilliant life. But I grew up with a single mother. My little brother and I, we grew up below the poverty line here in Australia for most of my childhood. We went through the family court justice system, which was not fun. And we went to many different rural public schools and lived in lots of rural towns. So because of all that and a few other things, I'm not supposed to be here. But it has been a passion of mine for a long time to help show other young people that they can achieve their dreams and they do not have to abide by the circumstances or statistics. We can prove those statistics wrong, and our past or present circumstances that are supposed to make us disadvantaged for life do not have to. When we learn how to empower ourselves to take control and care of our own life and learning and well-being and happiness and health and success, do you know what we realise? We realise we have so much more power than we think to take control and care of our own lives. And I've actually created over the last 12 years an approach to education to help young people do just this, to overcome their circumstances and take control of their own life. So that approach I've created is called a holistic, brain-based approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning. And this approach improves teacher and student wellbeing and makes teaching and learning more enjoyable, engaging, easier and effective because it's based on the brain science of how our brains actually learn. Plus, it is super empowering. It's empowering for young people, our students, to know what's going on inside their own brain when they're experiencing different emotions or thoughts or struggling with challenging work or making mistakes. But it's also really empowering for us as teachers to know how we can plan and present lessons and activities and assessments in ways that will help children and teenagers learn, remember and achieve well. This approach also helps all young people, no matter whether they're excelling at maths or struggling at reading or they've got ADHD or dyslexia or whatever. It helps all of us realise and reach our incredible true potential, which we all have, holistically, the whole child. So socially and emotionally and physically and mentally and academically, that whole package. So what's your main goal for the future of the young humans you teach? It's a really good question that we should think about every day if we're a teacher. So I bet that you are all thinking something like this, that this is what you want for the future of your students. You want them to be happy, healthy and safe, yes? You want them to feel fulfilled in life, satisfied, to love learning, to achieve success or whatever it is that they set their heart and mind on. You want them to be resilient and be able to cope with challenges because life happens, to be confident and accept themselves as that unique person that we each are. We want our students to be good people who contribute positively and give back to the world around them. We want them to shine their special, unique light on the world that each one of us has. And overall, we want our students to be the best version of themselves and realise and reach their incredible true potential. So, do you agree with me? Hopefully you do, because that is the goal behind all of the workshops that my partner and I do. So my partner Todd and I run workshops where we share this approach to education and wellbeing, teaching and learning all across Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and online. And we love sharing the power and potential of the human mind, the human brain, because it's fascinating and no one teaches us how it works, and that is crazy. So a little bit about me. I am not a doctor, a psychologist, a neuroscientist or a professor. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for over 12 years now. I'm an educational neuroscience specialist teacher. I was a semi-finalist in some Teaching Excellence Awards. I'm a very experienced social and emotional learning trainer, consultant, curriculum developer and co-author. working with an educational psychology professor. The approach that I'm going to be sharing some of with you tonight has been featured in countless schools, magazines, conferences, universities and so forth. I receive government funding from the Western Australian government pretty much continuously to share our parent and family brain-based workshops. I have got 2 grants from the International Brain Research Organisation in Paris to allow me to share the work in more rural and regional school communities. I was a TEDx speaker, so you can watch my TED Talk after this. And pretty excitingly, I have just launched the world's first teacher professional development in holistic mind-brain education in an app, which I'll talk more about soon. But more important than anything I've just said is that I practice what I teach, so I know it works. So I'm very comfortable and confident to sit here tonight and share this with you, because I have used everything I'm going to share with you with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students I've taught, plus in my own life, with wonderful benefits, so I know that it works. So what is mind-brain education, also called brain-based education or educational neuroscience? Well, it combines these 3 fields: education, teaching and learning in the classroom, with kids, with teenagers, with students, and psychology, which is our mental thoughts. So the mind, our thoughts, is the psychology part, and then the neuroscience, which is the physical brain science of how our brain learns and thinks and feels, etc. When we combine those 3 fields together, we are so empowered, and it's really magic. The problem has always been, though, that neuroscientists and psychologists and teachers don't always speak the same language, let alone students and parents as well. And that's where I believe why I believe I've been so successful in this field, is because I started as a teacher and I'm fascinated with the mind and the brain, and I have this ability to take complex, fascinating information from the psychologists and the neuroscientists, cutting edge information, and share it in a way that students, children of all ages understand, and their teachers and parents. So there is an author called Leslie Hart, and he says teaching without an awareness of how the brain learns is like designing a glove with no sense of what a hand looks like. It just doesn't make sense. Another quote by a professor here in Australia, he says, educators, teachers, we often know little about the organ that we work with most, but change is coming. And change starts now with people like you. When I get to share this information with you, you're already interested, so that's amazing. Thank you. This is my famous quote. Since the brain is central to the learning process, right? We can't learn without the brain. So if we're in the business of learning, which we are if we're a teacher or a student or a parent, then doesn't it make sense that we would benefit from knowing how the brain learns best? And when you put it like that, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Okay. So what we do is we take a 4-pronged approach. We start with getting well-being right first and knowing why we have to get well-being correct first. We take a holistic approach and we make sure that students, parents and teachers, the whole community, are on the same page, speaking the same language. And everything we do is 100% evidence-based and underpinned by fascinating, cutting-edge educational neuroscience and psychology knowledge. So let's just look at the holistic part of it. Why holistic? Why are we taking a holistic brain-based approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning? Well, what do we mean by holistic? What we mean is things like our nutrition, what we eat, our movement, our sleep, our thoughts, the environment we're in, our social interactions, those everyday factors, that's what we mean. So why are we talking about them? What's the big deal? Well, these everyday lifestyle factors are so often overlooked and ignored and forgotten in their impact on education and the development of a young person's brain from a health and happiness point of view, but also from a learning, intellectual, cognitive development point of view. And this is something that the OECD, we've probably all heard of that, a big international organisation, promotes as well, that we need to be taking that holistic brain-based approach to education to help young people reach their true potential. Now, we mentioned that all 3 players in the education community need to be on the same page, the students, the teachers and the parents, because if we ignore all the rest of the politics and policies and all of that, but we make sure that the students, the families and the teachers are all on the same page, speaking the same language with the same understandings, that's when the magic happens. And we get feedback about this all the time from principals at schools. Now, even if the students who you're working with are in not the first world country, okay, maybe they're in a disadvantaged or even third world country, can this work for them? Absolutely. So studies in developing nations have shown that when parents learn brain-based strategies to enhance their children's mental development, learning and so forth, it resulted in improvements in their grades, in their well-being, their health, their happiness, and even incomes later in life. So it does make a big difference. Now, we want to make sure that the students are not forgotten, okay? It's not just about the parents and the teachers. The students are very important. Students spend on average 11,000 hours learning at school in their lifetime using their brain. So shouldn't students, parents, and us as teachers, obviously, use the latest information about how our brains learn best every single day? It makes sense, doesn't it? Now, this guy here, Dr. John Pelly, he's a professor of medical education in America. And he says students who understand how their brain works always perform better than those who don't. They always achieve academically better than those who don't understand their brain. This is something I've experienced firsthand with hundreds of students who I have taught. It's very true. And for the students themselves, when they are self-aware and empowered with how exactly they learn and feel and think in their mind and their brain, it is like metacognition on steroids, because they know exactly what's going on in their brain and their mind and how to take control of that and help them learn and feel good. Now, it will help all of your students, whether they are flailing and really struggling, right up to really flourishing and excelling. In fact, even if they have a traumatic background, because the first two principles for supporting children dealing with trauma are to provide them environments and experiences that stimulate and enrich brain growth, and to make sure that the children themselves and their parents, teachers and so forth understand that link between the traumatic event that's happened and how it has affected their cognitive abilities. Now, this is a quote from a 13-year-old student I taught in Australia using this approach, and they said, "Thank you for teaching us in a way that makes you actually learn instead of just memorizing stuff for a test, then forgetting it straight after, just to repeat the cycle." Now, it's amazing, isn't it? It's pretty sad that 13-year-olds have figured out that that's the point of education. You just memorize stuff for a test and forget it. That is not, obviously, the point of education. So it's really awesome that I get this sort of feedback all the time about it being more effective for them to learn, far more enjoyable, way more engaging when you use this brain-based holistic approach. Now, it is as much for the teachers as it is for the students. So when I go and share all this information tonight about what benefits your students' brains and what will help your students' brains learn well, please know that the exact same strategies will work for you. They work for us as adults to help us be the best teacher we can be. So it's really professional and personal development all in one. And we get feedback like the couple that you're seeing on your screen right now, literally all the time. We have countless, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonials and feedback just like this. All right, so these people exist in the world. They are brain scientists, quantum physicists and psychologists, and they know so incredible information about the human mind and the human brain, and they share it amongst each other, and they write about it in medical journals, but it does not reach young people, the future of humanity. And to me, that is insane, because young people deserve to know. So these people use all this information: world-leading neuroscientists, military special ops soldiers, very wealthy, successful entrepreneurs, Olympians, very elite sports players. These people, the top people in their field, they know and use all of these brain-based, mind-brain strategies, tips and techniques every single day. Why? Because they know that these strategies will help them achieve their potential and perform at their peak. And like I said at the end of my TED Talk, I am very passionate about young people because they deserve to know this information too, so that they can perform at their peak and reach their incredible true potential as well. And obviously us as parents and teachers need to know as well. There we go. We all deserve to know it because we're teaching the future of humanity. So quite literally, the future of education, You can see it on the screen, and this is us riding that wave right out the front. When we use a brain-based holistic approach to wellbeing, teaching and learning, it's right at the forefront of the future in global education, and it's very exciting. All right, let's do some Brain Science 101. Now, this is a shortened version, of course, because I don't have time to explain it all tonight, but let's get going. So, Brain Science 101. Okay, did you know that you and your students have a plastic brain? Now, it's not really plastic, but neuroscientists call our brain neuroplastic. So you might have heard of the word neuroplasticity, and what it means is the brain is not a fixed organ. Our students do not have a fixed potential or a fixed level of intelligence. That's not how it works. Our brain is massively transformable and retrainable. It can repair itself even in the face of unimaginable trauma and damage. And it can, very changeable, very responsive. So our brain is very responsive to our actions and our thoughts and our choices in all of those lifestyle daily factors. So it's a fascinating subject to learn about, and especially because most of this neuroscientists have learnt within our lifetimes, which makes it very exciting. So currently though, too many students, parents and teachers unfortunately think that we are born with a certain level of potential or intelligence that we're either stuck with or blessed with for life. You're either smart or you're not, and that's it. But that is utter nonsense. Once we learn our brain's astonishing power and potential, regardless of the brain we think we were born with, and how we can take control and care of our brain to achieve anything we put our mind to through our choices, thoughts and actions, all of a sudden what you see is that students believe in themselves, their mindset, their behaviour changes and magic happens. One young primary student said to me, "If I didn't know I could grow my brain, I would think that I was born dumb, so I will stay dumb." And another one said that one of their favourite things was learning that you can actually grow your brain and make it stronger. The key is to never ever give up. And of course, when we're talking about children and teenagers, they need their parents and teachers to never ever give up on them and to help them to never ever give up as well. So Dr. Sandra Chapman, she's a cognitive neuroscientist, and she says you need to realise you are the driver, so you are in control, and the mechanic, so you can fix and improve the most powerful engine in the whole world, and that is the human brain. It's astonishing. All right, this is a neuron. It is a brain cell. There are about 86 billion neurons in your brain. They look like little trees with roots and branches. And if we zoom out a little bit, what happens is the end of one branch of a neuron will reach out and connect with the end of a root or branch of another neuron to make massive neuron pathways through the brain. And these pathways are electrical. Electrical impulses or electrical signals are sent through the brain in these neuron pathways. And there is a different pathway for every single thing that you think and learn and do. So this could be the pathway for counting. There's another pathway for writing your name. There's another pathway for tying your shoelaces. So there's different pathways for every single fact and skill and piece of knowledge and thing you can do and thing you know. It kind of looks like this. In the brain. So there's lots of tangled electrical connections going on, and the more tangled electrical pathways and connections, the better, because it means that your students know a lot of skills and facts and knowledge. So what is this showing? It's showing that the electricity, the first time your students are learning something, is very small. It's kind of weak and pathetic electricity. It's not a memory yet. They're not smart at it yet. But if we get our students to keep practicing and repeating something over and over again, look what happens. The electricity gets stronger and faster and more powerful. When it's like that, it becomes a long-term memory and the students have learnt it. They do know it. But students need messengers to send those electrical signals to complete the thinking and the learning and the memories through their brain. And those messenger chemicals that take the electricity across the gap between the branches of the neurons are called neurotransmitters because they transmit the electrical signal, the thought, through the neurons, neurotransmitters. And that's what you're looking at here. So this is sort of a close-up, a zoomed-in version of the end of two branches of neurons, and the little yellow dots are the neurotransmitters or messenger chemicals taking the electrical signal across that gap so that your student can remember their times tables or counting or writing or the facts you're teaching them. Now, 3 of the best messenger chemicals for everyday learning and memory are as follows. Now, I know I've spelt day wrong, but just hear me out. If we get these chemicals into our students' brains every day, then we are literally giving them 3 of the best messenger chemicals to help them learn and remember and get smart. So you don't need to remember this, but chemical number 1, D, stands for dopamine. Have you heard of dopamine? So how do we get dopamine in the brains of students? Whenever they experience feelings of positivity, so positive feelings, curiosity, laughter, humour, fun, enjoyment, and we want dopamine in their brains. We also want chemical A, and that's called acetylcholine. How do we get acetylcholine in their brains? Whenever they are putting their attention and focus on a task or a learning activity that we're getting them to do. And that's very important because without acetylcholine, that number 2 chemical, students cannot make a memory. They cannot learn and remember. And number 3, E, is epinephrine. How do we get epinephrine in our students' brains? When they need to put in a little bit of effort. So tasks shouldn't be too easy and too boring and not too difficult, but that right level of difficulty, where they're a little bit tricky and challenging, is necessary. It's a great necessary thing for learning because it gives them that chemical. Now, there's a lot more I could go into. This is a very brief, rushed overview of these 3 chemicals. But basically, if we get these 3 chemicals into our students' brains, positivity, attention and effort, those 3 aspects of teaching, into our students' brains, into our lesson, those 3 chemicals say, oi, brain, this thing that you're learning right now is very important, so sit up and take notice. Make it a long-term memory. So it kind of works like this. The first time that we're teaching them something, the pathway is being made in their brain through the branches and roots of those neurons, those brain cells. And then when we get them to practice and repeat it quite a few times, look what happens. The path gets more well-travelled and the electricity thinks, okay, I think I know where to go now. I'm finding I can remember. It's getting easier. And then when we get them to practice and repeat it lots of times, look what happens in the end. They get a superhighway through their brain. And when they have a superhighway through their brain, that pathway is so strong, the electricity can zap down it quicker than you can snap your fingers, and that is a long-term memory. But remember, it's not enough to repeat things in the same boring or easy way. We need to be getting students to repeat and practice things while they are experiencing feelings of positivity, enjoyment, and focus and attention and effort. And obviously things get more hard and more difficult along the way as they're learning and progressing. Now let's look at why well-being must come first. In your brain, in your student's brain, towards the back, the lower part, there's a part called the amygdala. We call it the angry amygdala when we teach children because it turns on, so there's a lot of electricity firing away in there, when your students are angry or tired or scared or stressed or anxious or worried or nervous or upset. Any of those not so good feelings turns on that lower part of the brain, which is the survival, fight or flight part of the brain. When that turns on, it padlocks out the front part of their brain. Now, the front part of their brain here is the smart, human, learning part of the brain, the rational, logical part of their brain. So if students' amygdala is on and they're scared or stressed or anxious or worried or tired, we cannot teach them and expect them to become their smartest or reach their highest potential, because that front part of their brain, which is their learning, human, smart part of their brain, physically is locked out. It starts to go offline. It can't work properly. So high levels of amygdala stress over extended periods of time gives us students who are intolerant and irritable, they lack creativity, they're negative and critical, so the glass is always half empty, their memory is impaired, they're prone to making bad decisions and not having the best risk assessment or emotional regulation or self-control. They can't think rationally and logically. Their health suffers, their immunity reduces, and obviously their learning suffers. So we have all that to work against, and that's why we need to know when the amygdala turns on, how we can identify that in students, help the students identify it themselves, which even young students can be taught to do, and then they say, oh, my amygdala is on, or we say, your amygdala is on, here's what you can do to shut it down so you can feel better and think and learn. All right, so when we do teach kids how to shut down that angry amygdala, they can bounce back more easily rather than staying really angry or upset for too long. And that is resilience, isn't it? And we all want kids to be more resilient. And that is why this is our framework, and it starts with better staff and student wellbeing, because until our brains as teachers and our students' brains are in a sort of mentally healthy wellbeing state, we can't learn and teach as effectively as possible. So once we've got wellbeing right, then we move on to better teaching and learning using brain-based strategies. And that, of course, in turn leads to more enjoyment in the classroom, easier and more effective learning. And that leads to better wellbeing and more engagement and better behaviour and less stress because they're achieving better and enjoying what they're learning. And as teachers, we are the system. So we can complain all we want about the policies and politics and so forth. And I'm sure we all have and do at times, but we need to remember that when we're in the classroom with those students, we are the system and the change can start with us. It is not about reinventing the wheel, it is about refining the wheel and making it as best as possible. And especially about knowing how and why the different strategies for teaching and learning work or don't work. Because when we know the brain science behind why they're either successful or not, and they might hinder and hurt our students' learning, then we can make deliberate, purposeful choices and put in the effort to purposefully, deliberately do the positive activities more often and not the other activities. So it's very empowering in that way. So what I'm going to leave you with are 4 different tips that you can hopefully take away with you. So number 1 is to get your students' wellbeing right first and your own as well. Now, how do we get wellbeing right first? There are so many different factors involved, from our nutrition, so eating actual fruits and vegetables and not processed sugary fake foods, teaching your kids the power of their thoughts and how they can actually control and change and choose their thoughts, which is very empowering and beneficial. Anything that calms the brain, so anything like mindfulness or meditation. Movement is amazing. It's one of the best things you can do to calm that angry amygdala down. One of the best things you can do for depression. It's fantastic. Listening to music is also very powerful and profound at shutting down that amygdala part of our brain. Getting outside into nature, amazing. And you can also bring nature indoors. You don't have to, if you can't, get outside in the forest. But if you can, gardens and plants in the classroom and getting the kids outside is amazing. Gratitude and compassion, so promoting them more in schools, because they're not a light, fluffy thing that we can ignore and stick to the side. They need to be a central part of schooling, because we all want the world to be kinder and more compassionate, and being compassionate and kind and having gratitude and being grateful for what we have in life literally makes us happier and healthier and smarter. It helps us learn better. It's amazing. So yeah, all those sorts of things, movement, music, nutrition, power of your thoughts, nature, mindfulness, amazing. Now, number 2 would be engage with emotions. We need far more positive emotion in education. Students should love coming to school and be able to get an education and learn the fascinating knowledge that exists on planet Earth and about planet Earth. So think about positive emotions. It's not a waste of time. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the best use of time to get positive emotions and fun and play and enjoyment and curiosity into your lessons. Here's some really good ways that you can do this. So get the students predicting, ask them curiosity-causing questions, show them images or ask questions that get them really, really curious. Stories, telling them stories, teaching them things through stories, not just isolated facts. Movement, bring more movement into your lessons in your classroom, more music into your lessons in your classroom, and more positive social interactions with their peers, with each other, with the students. They're all very simple ways of getting loads of dopamine, that first everyday chemical. Number 3 is repetition modes. So please don't just teach the students in one way. For example, textbook, read, answer questions. The next day, textbook, read, answer questions. That's not the most enjoyable way of learning, and it's not the most effective. So instead, and this makes it more fun for us as teachers, involve lots of different modes. So movement, role plays, physical things, doing things with your hands and your bodies, quizzes, social interaction, social learning, drawing, teaching each other what you're learning. All the repetition modes you can think of makes it much more effective. And the last one, number 4, allow your students choice and purpose, because we know we like to have a bit of choice in what we do, and we know that we like it to be meaningful and relevant. And I'm sure all of you are teachers because it's meaningful and relevant to you. That's why you're here listening to me right now, which is amazing. So what we mean by number 4 is that in your classroom, allow students to have some choice in either the environment and how it's set up in the classroom, or the learning topics that they get to learn, the projects that they get to do, the research that they get to do. Let them have some choice, because it really benefits them. It makes them feel more in control of their learning. It engages them, and it will help them learn better. And purpose. If students know that there is a bigger picture, real life purpose behind what they're learning, it does so much good for their learning and their engagement. So always try and ask yourself and ask your students, what's the reason I'm actually teaching them this? Because the reason should never be because it's on a test. There should always be a bigger picture purpose, a larger real life reason, and that can really motivate kids to want to pay attention. So there you go. Number 1, get well-being right first, so their front part of their brain can work and be smart. Number 2, engage with positive emotions. Number 3, repetition modes. Get your students learning in lots of different ways, lots of different modes. And number 4, allow your students some choice and let them know the real world, big picture purpose behind what it is they're learning and why they're learning it. So what I like to do, and this really does work, is to focus on what we want more of. So for example, instead of focusing on student and teacher stress, let's look at how we can boost student and staff well-being and happiness. Instead of focusing on bad behaviour of students, let's focus on how we can get students engaged so they don't want to misbehave. Instead of focusing on bullying, we encourage compassion and kindness, and why that's a smart thing to do. Instead of focusing on distracted students, how do we gain student attention and maintain it? Instead of focusing on a lack of effort and a lack of motivation, make learning meaningful and relevant. And instead of focusing on disinterested parents, let's engage parents as collaborative partners. Instead of focusing on anxiety, let's build student resilience and self-acceptance. And instead of focusing on low achievement, let's improve their thinking and understanding. So, what I'd like to finish with is this. If I have sparked some interest and curiosity in your brains, you can learn more. So if you take a photo of the screen that you can currently see, or a screenshot, you can access my whole entire brain-based holistic teacher professional development for wellbeing, teaching and learning online. And so it's called the Brainy Blossoms Teacher PD. You can access that on a desktop or a laptop computer, or even on an app on your mobile phone. And we also have an online student course if you teach students ages 5 to 12, and that's all about managing their emotions. And you can get both of them at the website links that you can see on the screen. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope I've sparked some interest and curiosity. Okay, a question has come through. Awesome. So the question is how to get kids involved in physical activities, especially when they're glued with their gadget, mostly during their holidays. Absolutely. So in the classroom, we definitely don't want to, because it's not great for their brains, have students learning only or primarily through their screens and their gadgets. So when they're in our classroom, make learning fun so that they don't want to use their gadgets. Ideally, not like have their gadgets not there so that they can't touch them when they're in our classroom with us, and make the physical activities fun for them so they want to do them. So how can you do that? You can ask them, what do you like? What do you prefer to do? What sort of physical activities? Give them a choice. Involve them. So you could say, Do you like, depending on where you live and the ages of your kids and the facilities around, do you like swimming? Do you like bike riding? Do you like, what sort of music do you like? Because then you can go on YouTube and get dance routines where they copy along to different music. Whether it's, I don't know, rap music from America or Indian Bollywood music, like whatever it is. And you can let them choose, because if they choose, then they feel more motivated, empowered and engaged to give it a shot. So yeah, that would definitely be one. Let them choose and ask them what activities do they like. Okay, which part of the child's brain develops faster in the childhood? Oh, okay. So when students are really young, up until about the age of 7, that amygdala survival emotion part of their brain, which is that lower part, is actually in control most of the time. The prefrontal cortex, this front part of their brain we mentioned, that's used for learning and thinking rationally and logically, that hasn't been finished being built yet for the first time. And then throughout childhood, from about the ages of sort of 5, 6 onwards, that front part of the brain starts to come online and they start to be a bit more rational and logical with their thinking. And then when they get to become teenagers, their brain goes through a rebuilding process, and the rebuilding starts in that lower part of their brain and finishes in that prefrontal cortex. And so this rational, logical part of the brain that is used for things like emotional regulation, self-control, risk assessment, making good, safe, smart decisions, that part of their brain in teenagers hasn't finished being built for the second time yet, and that's why teenagers sometimes make crazy decisions. Okay, this one, how could you suggest, new question, how could you suggest to encourage students' self-esteem? Wonderful question. Okay, this one is a really important topic. It's too important and too big for me to cover fully now, but what we need to do is boost students' self-acceptance. So self-acceptance means that students know their good points, their positive personality qualities. Maybe they're fair, maybe they're funny, maybe they're honest and can be trusted, maybe they're a good team player, maybe they're a great leader. Their innate personality qualities or traits, and they also know their not so good qualities, but they know that with both of them, they're still good enough. They're still awesome, as I like to say, they're awesome with those positive and negative qualities, and realizing that when they do make mistakes or have one of their negative qualities come to the forefront, it doesn't take away any of their positive qualities. They still retain and keep all those positive qualities. It's a really big topic to talk about. The professor of educational psychology I work for is very passionate about self-acceptance, and so am I. I call self-acceptance a superpower because it really is when it comes to self-esteem. A great question though, but there's so much more involved. Do we have any more questions? Looks like that's done. Nope, one, awesome. Can you please provide examples of successful brain-based learning activities or programs? Absolutely. So if I go back here, so I mentioned some activities, here we go. So things like quizzes are great. Social interactions where students are talking with each other, asking questions, answering questions, teaching each other what they've learned. Movement, so when they're doing role plays to act out and replicate what they've learnt. Reading obviously is a great one, and there's lots of different reading techniques, but I don't have time to go into them. Drawing is a great one for the brain to help them remember things, get them to draw what it is that they're learning and so forth. So there's loads and loads, but honestly way too many for me to explain in just a couple of minutes, I'm sorry. Alrighty guys, so that brings us to a close. Great questions, and there's so much more I could cover. But thank you very much for being here, everyone.
La 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 la.